Andy Abbott, defend our NHS Chelmsford.
Andy, take me back. We first spoke earlier this summer when you were sparked into starting a massive petition regarding the accident and emergency unit right here at Broomfield Hospital. Take me back to that point.
Point out there was rather more to it than just the 38 degrees petition. We launched, there was a 38 degrees petition that attracted 21,000 signatures opposing the downgrade of the accident and emergency department here behind us, which would have seen all blue light emergencies at Burns going to Basildon. We also had a paper petition which we collected in the town centre and in various locations around the town that collected some 10,000 signatures. And we also held demonstrations of a couple of hundred people and public meetings, which were also very well attended. We should also point out there was also a very big campaign in Southend as well, because they were facing the downgrade there as well. And the two campaigns working in tandem together were successful, and we managed to make sure that the A&E departments weren't going to be downgraded, and the local health bosses announced that we'd run our campaign back in July.
Bring us up to date now. What has changed? You won that particular battle, you felt. You then went into consultation mode with Broomfield Hospital. Tell me about that.
Well, the consultation is just about to begin. There's a consultation about to come along. What we were told recently by local health bosses...
Okay, so more recently, Andy, you met local health bosses for a pretty important meeting to thrash out things, to find out what their plans were. What happened?
Well, we were largely reassured that there was going to be no significant changes in service. For instance, we were told there was going to be specialist centres. Here at Broomfield was going to be for general surgery, cardiac and strokes would go to Basildon, and cancer treatment would be at Southend. However, what local health bosses did tell us is that only a very small amount of people, the very most serious cases, would be transferred to these specialist centres. The vast majority of people would be treated at their local hospital. However, reports have emerged last week on the BBC, which are telling us this might not be the case. And so we're slightly concerned that we've been misled. The BBC spoke to consultants at Southend who believe that instead of it just being a small minority of cases that will be transferred to specialist centres, it could well be that nearly all cases, nearly all patients will instead be transferred to the specialist centres. And I think what we're concerned about this is that the consultants are saying this isn't going to work, because, for instance, at the moment Basildon has already been on black alert an awful lot over the last few years, because it hasn't been able to cope with demand, and that Basildon will be completely and utterly overwhelmed if the vast majority of stroke and cardiac patients are going over there. They will not be able to cope.
What's behind it all? Don't tell me money.
Well, yes. I mean, what they actually need to do is that it's over £20 million worth of savings need to be made. You know, the government are imposing sustainability and transformation plans across the country, and it's all about cost cutting. The truth is, if we're going to have specialist centres, these systems will actually probably cost more money to bring about. It shouldn't be a cost cutting measure, and that's the real problem here.
But they're saying it isn't a cost-cutting measure. You're looking at it.
Well,
they're saying 21 million. What's wrong with that?
Well, they are actually admitting that it is a cost-cutting measure. If you do look at what local health bosses are saying.
So what's wrong with cost-cutting?
Well, because these are not about efficiency savings. We've already got an NHS which is completely overworked, which hasn't got a sufficient amount of staff as it is. You know, we have a crisis every single winter. The real problem with our NHS is being starved of cash.
They'd have 21 million to spend on the specialist centres.
Well, it's 21 million. No, this is 21 million pounds they won't have. You know, this is the problem we've got. They've got to find a way of cutting 21 million from local health budgets. And the only way they can do that is to further undermine our National Health Service, which I think, as most people know, is being seriously undermined as it is.
They're saying that surely their point of view, they must be saying, no, we're going to save 21 million.
Well, that's what actually they're required to do by the government, is to save £21 million. I mean, our real problem is not so much with local health losses, because they're caught between a rock and a hard place. Our real problem is with Jeremy Hunt and what his plans are doing to the NHS. The government needs to adequately resource our National Health Service. If you actually have a look and compare Britain to most of Europe is spending, as a percentage of its GDP, nearly twice as much as we are spending here in Britain. This is the problem that we've got here. We need more money spent on the NHS and not keep cutting it. Because I think what they're doing is they're continuing to cut our NHS, they continue to privatise our NHS, they're selling it off to their fat cat friends, and it's not going to end well. We need to take a stand now and fight for the future and fight to save our NHS.
You make no secret of the fact that you are politically driven. You're a member of Momentum. You say that on your Facebook site. You're not ashamed of that. That's your point of view. Isn't this just yourself Tory bashing?
I have my own political views, but when I speak for the campaign, I speak in a non-party political mode. I don't think anybody could ever accuse the campaign that has been run over the last few months of being party political. We've had support from members of all political, or supporters of all political parties, and none. The campaign was supported right across the political board, from UKIP to the Liberal Democrats to the Labour Party. The idea that the campaign has had a party political motivation, I think it is wrong. I come here and I speak for the campaign, not for my, yes, like everybody, I have my own, personal political opinions, but I'm not here to push that. I'm here to fight for the future of our local health services and our NHS.
Now, what's wrong with a stroke victim saying that I would like to go to a specialist stroke hospital?
Well, for instance, if I hear local consultants in Southend telling me that the specialist centre is not going to work because Basildon is going to be completely and utterly overwhelmed by that, then if I, future touch wood, hopefully I never do have a stroke, but if I do not want to go to a so-called specialist centre that is completely overwhelmed and cannot cope. And another thing is, if I do go to, I think most people would prefer to be treated in a local hospital. It's important to be treated in a local hospital because when you are in hospital, people need support networks of their friends and their families. Now, Basildon is all well and good if you've got, if you've got a car. Okay, Basildon is 20 minutes, half an hour up the road, perhaps longer depending on the traffic. But if you're relying on public transport, for instance, if you've got an elderly, if somebody's in hospital and you haven't got a car, then you've got to rely on public transport to get up to Basildon. Basildon is not an easy place to reach, is it? We have a very poor, lousy bus service between the two. If you want to get there by train, you can virtually forget it, because Basildon is, of course, on the Fenchurch Street line. So if you actually want to travel to Basildon by train, you've either got to go all the way to Southend and go between the two stations in Southend and cross over to the Fenchurch Street line, or you've got to go all the way into London, get the Circle line round to Tower Hill and jump on another train at Fenchurch Street. The links are very, very poor, and people need these support networks if they are in a hospital, and it's a very important part of the recuperation process.
What about the fact I've heard that I hear Basildon Hospital doesn't even have a heliport, is that right?
Basildon currently does not have a helicopter pad, no. So again, that's going to be a problem for it, certainly.
So where does the fight to preserve the status quo go on from here?
Well, we will continue campaigning. We're particularly looking to work with our fellow campaigners in Basildon and Southend, because literally on this one, whatever we were told by certain politicians, we are all in this together across Mid and South Essex, and we all need to stand together to fight for the future of local health services. For instance, on just this Saturday, some campaigners from Chelmsford will be going down to a public meeting in Southend, and will be supporting the Southend campaign as we fight to defend health services locally and nationally.
Am I right in just having said that you want to preserve the status quo? You don't want anything improved, anything changed?
Well, no, we're always happy to see things improved and changed, but of course, there's no point in changing the status quo if we're going to make it worse. Yes, it's always great to make things better, but if the services, if changes are going to mean that we're going to end up worse off than we are at the moment, then it's better to fight for what we've got. The most important thing to remember is that these changes are not being clinically driven. They're being driven by the fact that local health bosses are required by the government to make £21 million worth of cuts. Yes, it'd be great to see specialist centres, but we need changes to be driven clinically rather than changes to be driven by austerity.
And why aren't they being driven clinically?
Because the government is obsessed with continuing to knock the National Health Service financially. If you remember in 2010, when the government came in, they promised us that the NHS would be ring-fenced. The fact that we've got local health bosses being required to make £21 million worth of cuts proves that the NHS was not ring-fenced. Even the NHS is being hit by austerity, and I think people are getting fed up with it now.